The Brunswick affair? Doesn't mean much to me.
Brunswick affair? I don't remember at all.
Brunswick? No, I don't. No. No.
No, I don't. What affair is that?
The Brunswick affair? No, I don't.
I really don't know. I have never heard about it.
No? What is it about?
This is not the only scandal that goes on in this country.
October 22nd, 1964. Mrs. Bernice Hemingway begins a family wash that will end in tragedy. She puts 18 jumbo-sized boxes of Zuck laundry detergent into her washer at one time. Can she still recall that day?
Sure I do, of course. But it's difficult for me to talk about it. It was too traumatic. I just don't want to talk about it.
3 days later, Theo Touchette pulls into Andre's self-serve gas bar and buys 47 gallons of super. His tank only holds 12.
Hey!
But for the quick thinking of garage owner Andre Martin, the consequences of Mr. Touchette's actions would have been disastrous.
Yes, I remember that day, but I would like to forget about it.
Like Bernice Hemingway and Theo Touchette, every one of these people displayed the same kind of erratic behavior. Most refuse to talk about it. All are fated to bear the emotional scars for life. At the time, these people had another thing in common. They had all watched the same brand of television set, the BRONSWIK. This set had all the characteristics of an ordinary television, but a tiny electronic component, ingeniously concealed, gave this unassuming device inconceivable powers. 1734 Edison Street East, Apartment 6. Our story begins here. This strange old man is the world-famous inventor Pierre van Bruggen. After long years of arduous labor and exhausting research, Van Bruggen has finally succeeded in perfecting an invention that had been his lifelong dream: television. He unveils his great discovery to a waiting world, which could hardly have waited any longer. Television took the world by storm. It was irresistible. As sales boomed, manufacturers struggled valiantly to meet the universal demand. Within a few short years, there was a television in every home. (1964). Less than 15 years later, the statistics tell the whole story. 1.82 sets per person. The conquest is complete. Television has become a fact of life.
Not very much.
But not tonight.
No, not tonight.
Television is the success story of the 20th century. Its future seems assured, at least until the 12th of July, 1964. On that day, the human drama that was the Brunswick affair began to unfold. Janitor Tino Pigeon narrowly escaped serious injury.
My shift was almost over. I was right here, minding my own business, when a bottle of salad oil smashed on the floor right beside me, less than 2 feet away. Then suddenly another one hit. I looked up at the escalator just in time. Then about 20 bottles fell all at once.
Mrs. Edna Petty was held responsible for the incident. Her shopping bags burst and 22 bottles of Dora salad oil plunged a full 2 floors to the ground beneath.
I could have been killed, maybe even crippled.
For almost 20 years, Sam Brisket had bought his morning paper at Kathy's Corner Handy Store and waited patiently nearby for his bus. Mr. Brisket had no car. August 1st, 1964, 9:38 a.m. Sam Brisket is photographed standing at the bus stop with 28 tires.
Yes, I remember very well.
I don't know why he did it. We have no car. We never had a car. You must have been crazy. Show them the bill.
Here's the bill.
Sam Brisket has kept the bill all these years as a reminder of the madness he still can't explain.
So much money for nothing.
The case of Mrs. Jenny Barker was equally bizarre.
Well, in my case, it was a matter of buying dog food. I went to the supermarket and picked up 6 dozen cans of dog food, and I don't own a dog. I don't even like dogs. As a matter of fact, I have a can here. I kept it as a souvenir. It's called Mr. Coof.
At least 892 similar cases were reported during the course of the Brunswick affair. In every case, the same product was involved, Mr. Coof. Bert Dobbs lives more than 1,000 miles away from Jenny Barker, and yet his story is virtually identical.
I found that I was buying dozens and dozens of bottles of throat-ease cough syrup, and I nearly became addicted to the stuff.
One day, I went out and bought...
Sandra Lever purchased disposable diapers. She had no children.
How many did I buy? 30 dozen baby diapers.
Romeo Lafleur bought incredible quantities of beer.
I don't even drink beer. I bought...
Percy Roberts bought toothpaste.
a lot of it.
Me, I bought a lot of fried chicken.
Social standing, religious belief, political convictions, or ethnic origin made no difference. The symptoms were always the same.
Mi chiamo Giuseppe Tomistrati. A quell'epoca comprai 33 bottiglie di Grecia al numero 7 per i capelli, tintura. Eppure io ho una bella cabbellatura, no?
Even highly respected public figures were counted among the unfortunate victims.
I bought 10 pairs of shoes that day.
In order to protect their reputation and the reputation of different products, we have concealed the true identity of certain victims. The press lost no time in covering these strange events and increased its circulation with sensational headlines. September 4th, 1964. The National Institute of Accessological Studies starts examining the mysterious epidemic's first group of victims. The subjects were required to give their case histories. They were then subjected to a routine accessologic examination. Dr. Louis-Philippe Cartier, head of the Institute, supervised these tests.
When my colleagues and I agreed to administer the laboratory tests, I had absolutely no idea as to the underlying cause of the subject's abnormal behavior. In all, the testing lasted a little more than 9 weeks. The most advanced instruments available to modern science were put at our disposal, including a model FT62 accessometer. The results were irrefutable. The victims had all experienced a massive sensorial excitation. This was caused by exposure to electromagnetic waves carrying a positive manipulatic charge. Such waves could only have been emitted by a television set especially equipped with a highly sophisticated electronic device. But of course, which television and the exact nature of such a device were unknown to us at the time.
To find out more about that television, detailed questionnaires were distributed to the test subjects. Their responses were analyzed carefully. The special set was the BRONSWIK, to all appearances just another television. It was manufactured and distributed by BRONSWIK Enterprises. November 16th, 1964, investigation of the BRONSWIK begins. Professors Jarvis, Brownstein, and Munofsky are the first to examine the set. They reach a consensus as to the fundamental nature of the unknown electronic component and begin an exhaustive and methodical examination. In the end, they are forced to concede defeat. They are quickly replaced by Professors Cameron and Goldsmith of the International League of Electronic Communicators. However, due to a slight difference of opinion over an elementary algebraic principle, Professors Cameron and Goldsmith were unable to arrive at a conclusive result. With their departure, only one ray of hope remained. Edwin C. Kwong, the world's greatest expert in the field of electronics, a two-time winner of the Nobel Prize. November 27th, 1964. Dr. Kwong begins his own analysis of the BRONSWIK. Where his colleagues had failed, he succeeds. To his considerable satisfaction, Dr. Kwong discovers this miniature marvel, one of the greatest achievements in the field of cybernetics. It is a masterpiece of electronic design.
The manipulode, as we've come to call it, exerts a powerful effect on the moderating region of the brain's occipital lobe. It acts directly on this sector right here. Now let's see what happens when a normal human being watches a television set equipped with a manipulode. Here we can follow the path of electromagnetic waves carrying a neutral manipulodic charge. Each second, the viewer is exposed to several hundred of these waves. The individual's consumer's control center tends to exaggerate his needs. But because the manipulodic charge is neutral, the brain's moderating region is able to suppress up to 90% of his desires. Now see what happens when the manipulode emits waves carrying a positive charge. One positive manipulodic wave is emitted each second. This wave is made up of millions of microscopic particles called Kwong particles. The instant they come into contact with his occipital lobe, they will cause a normal individual to display bizarre and irrational behavior.
That particular day, I had an urge to buy watches, although I already had a watch. I went out and I bought 15 watches. I don't know why I did it.
The reason is simple. The Kwong particles completely paralyze the entire moderating region of the occipital lobe and allow the consumer's control center to become master of the brain. Its inflated desires become absolute commands. The particles' effects last a minimum of 27 hours.
In no time at all, reports of this peculiar chain of events had reached every corner of the civilized world. The public knew all about the BRONSWIK now, about the unique manipulode. What people still didn't know was who was responsible for instigating what had become known as the BRONSWIK affair. December 3rd, 1964, the powerful multinational Iconaki Corporation is implicated publicly for the first time.
Iconaki was my first employer.
The anonymous testimony of a former Iconaki employee breaks the official inquiry wide open.
My job to ICU Promotions, where I had to screen these films for them. But I just showed the films. I didn't screen them. I didn't watch them at all.
ICU, the system.
The 13th floor of the Iconaki building. The offices of ICU Promotions, an affiliated enterprise. A discreet search of the premises allows the authorities to gain possession of some highly compromising documents. Among others, the name of W.H. Bratberg figures prominently. He is president and director general of Bratberg Fabrics. In 1964, Bratberg Fabrics shows a staggering profit of 953%, its best year ever. The company is frequently referred to in the files found at ICU Promotions. Paul F. Vickers, Samuel Johnson, and Anthony Mayers are the principal shareholders in Multi-Products International, makers of such products as Mr. Koof, Zook, and Dora. Like W.H. Bratberg, these men are suspected of having engaged the services of ICU Promotions to boost their sales. All seem to have followed the corridor leading to this agency. December 24th, 1964, Christmas Eve. Violent demonstrations break out in several shopping centers. There are many arrests. Hundreds are injured.
The quantum particles emitted by the manipulode affected everyone who watched a BRONSWIK set in the same way. Although the problem was less severe for people enjoying financial security, it was easier for them to support their habits, so to speak. But what about the less fortunate ones, the members of the working class? You can imagine how it affected them. Shoplifting hit epidemic proportions. Burglaries abounded. There was constant rioting in the streets. The situation finally got out of control. It was just too much for the authorities to handle. But these aren't common criminals we're talking about, remember. These are honest, hard-working citizens. But under the sinister effects of the manipulode, they would stop at nothing to satisfy the unnatural demands of their overstimulated consumers' control center. Of course, technologically, the manipulode was years ahead of its time, but in my opinion, we were lucky the BRONSWIK affair took place when it did. Things would have turned out very differently, I assure you, if it had happened just a few years later, when people started buying everything with credit cards.
January 1st, 1965. The world forgets the BRONSWIK affair to celebrate the new year. The next morning, the headlines announced the sudden death of world-famous inventor Pierre van Bruggen. The letter he writes just before his death contains some startling revelations.
At last, the years of arduous labor and exhausting research were rewarded that morning. But the euphoria of the moment was rudely interrupted by a sudden visit from them. They asked me to come and work for them, an offer which, of course, I couldn't refuse. At the time, I was naively convinced that the future of modern science lay in the hands of the world's corporate giants. On July 2nd, 1960, I finished work on a delicate electronic device which I believed was intended for therapeutic use only. I found out how my invention is really being used for the first time this morning. There is only one thing left for me to do.
Pierre van Bruggen believed he could atone for his error only by suicide. But he forgot one thing before he died, to name them his mysterious employers. The Iconaki Corporation had become a prime suspect, mainly because of its direct connection to both ICU Promotions and BRONSWIK Enterprises. Further investigation revealed a few other affiliates, including some companies with worldwide reputations. The inquiry bogged down while trying to sort out the tangled maze of corporate relationships, and Iconaki was cleared. The end of January 1965. A noisy campaign is mounted against the BRONSWIK by a league of fanatics. Madness reigns. Hundreds of BRONSWIK television sets are destroyed each day, along with some normal ones. Early February 1965, television is going through the darkest period in its history.
After I heard about all this, I stopped watching TV for at least 3 or 4 days.
After this, I didn't watch television for some 5 months.
It was 1 month.
Television ratings plunged to a record low. For the first time since its creation, the future of television is in serious doubt. February 12th, the Spencer government orders a special cabinet meeting to deal with the BRONSWIK affair. A solution must be found. Emergency measures are quickly adopted. February 16th, the 37th Regiment of the National Guard is mobilized. The troops are given special training in searching out and destroying the manipulode. The BRONSWIK must be eliminated at all costs. At the same time, the government subsidizes ECK Industries, commissioning them to produce and distribute Professor Burkle's latest invention, view specs, anti-manipulotic glasses. Only the most advanced marketing techniques are used to sell them.
Available at these fine stores.
March 1965. The ratings don't improve. A massive nationwide publicity campaign is launched in an attempt to restore public confidence.
Hi, I'm Pete Capo, and believe me, the BRONSWIK affair is all over.
Hello, I'm Harold Forsyth. You know, we all have to face setbacks and difficulties in our everyday lives. Difficulties like the BRONSWIK affair. Well, the good times are back, believe me, because the BRONSWIK affair is all over.
Now my mommy lets me watch TV because the BRONSWIK affair is all over.